We're here with Coach Chris Parker of the Pickens Dragons for our Coaches Show. Coach, I just want to talk a little bit about the program. This is the first time really sitting down with you and doing this here. Just give us a little overall view of here, this being your second year. You know, you came off your first year. You guys had a little success, didn't make the playoffs, but your team was much better than it had been in previous years. So talk a little bit about just coming into your second season, and then we'll get into the the Sonoraville and your upcoming games.
Well, we're happy to have you guys on board with us and be doing this for you. And, our job is just to give our players a chance to be successful in the classroom, in the field, in the weight room, all the places we do. And so what we're trying to do is just get a little better each day, which we started 2 years ago, and now continuing to try to have some success. And at football, as a program, we're trying to get a little better. And where we were last year was good. We made some strides. We were an average team. We won some games and we lost some games, and this year is yet to be determined what will be, but we're looking forward to having those challenges of playing some schools that have a little more tradition maybe more accustomed to making the playoffs, and trying to get ourselves in a situation where we can we can be in a chance to make the playoffs. So in our league, every game up into that last one, assuming you can get in that last one, every game going into that last game is preparation to get into the playoffs, and you got to win that last game. And so everything we're doing in our program, from the weight room, special teams, offensively and defensively, is trying to prepare ourselves to be good in November, give ourselves a chance to succeed at the end of the season.
Now, Coach, it's obviously been a difference in the philosophy that you have. You guys, you brought in a little more no huddle. You spread it out a little bit, but you guys also run some of the things they have been running before. Talk a little bit about the difference between implementing the system in the first year and then having guys that have done it in a year, and then now you're having your guys come from the middle school and the young guys, and having guys more familiar with it this second time around.
Yeah, well, that's definitely huge. That's something that only comes with time. And when you go play somebody, the caliber of Dalton or Northwest or Ridgeland, or you look at around the area at Calhoun and Gainesville and some of these places where they're very successful, and Gilmer's done this lately with Coach Tankersley, where they, they're kind of systematic. You kind of know the players change, but you know what you're going to see from them. That's big, and then that's important that we get to that point. We're not there yet, but it's definitely easier the second time around to teach players even how to run a drill in practice, or how we want to carry the football, little things that we were having to teach previously that now younger guys, we still teach them, but maybe a younger guy sees an older guy doing that and just mimics it, versus us having to teach even seniors and juniors how we wanted to do stuff. Now we're finding ourselves teaching younger guys, and they need to follow the example of the older guys. And we're very fortunate. We got some very good seniors, and we got some good older players that have played, and they have good attitudes and they work hard, and so our younger guys see that, and hopefully that will continue. But for us to be good every year, we have to have that system in place, regardless of what it is, offensively or defensively, where players mimic what the older guys are doing, and you hope that's a good thing, not a bad.
All right, now, Coach, this year you've obviously you're undefeated. You played one game, Sonoraville. You beat them 47-0. You also technically had a shutout against Fannin in the scrimmage. Obviously, it's a scrimmage game, but talk a little bit about how your defense is playing and just the shutout streak itself.
Well, we're happy with where we played. I mean, Fannin got a few plays on us that we had some mental errors, and then of course they got some good players. Coach Chambers done a good job with them. And I saw they won. I was happy to see them win last week. So that they are an effective offensive team. We got them at a good time in the year probably. And but we had some blown coverages. We missed some things, and we tried to clean it up. I thought defensively we were probably a little better actually against Sonoraville. But even with that, the competition is going to get a little better for us even this week with Northwest. Got some really good players on offense, and they're no huddle too. It's going to be a challenge. So I think the bigger test for us defensively is how can we finish the year. So that chapter's yet to be written on how good defensively we can be. We're pleased with. I mean, obviously not giving up points in the first game was better than giving up points. But we did that last year at times and won some games by some bigger margins. But when we went against the teams that we thought were pretty physical and pretty good and have traditionally made the playoffs. And you look at the games against Northwest and Dalton and Gilmer and Ridgeland and those teams, we struggled a little bit defensively. So I'm excited about Friday and seeing if we have made that progress. Our coach has done a great job, players doing a good job of trying to do what we ask them to do, and it has shown up in that scrimmage and in the first game. But, really excited to see how it's going to show up in these next 9 games.
Now, obviously, the first game is always where you see your cramps and your penalties, and just first games on every level of football is always where, I don't want to say the worst, but it's generally the sloppiest or least organized, right, because it's the first game. That being out of your way and having the bye week, do you think now? I think most coaches would say they'd rather have their bye week in the middle or towards the end of the season. But you guys haven't had your bye week early. How do you think that's going to affect the play in your upcoming game?
It'll be interesting to see because we would prefer to have a bye week later, but we always try to make something positive and focus on the things we can control, which is it does give us 2 weeks to get ready for a really good football team who also had 2 weeks off. So Northwest was off last week, so that's not an advantage or disadvantage for either team. But what I think will be interesting is because we played in the scrimmage, we only played a half with our older guys. And in the previous game, we had a lead, so we only played a half with our older guys. So, our guys that rep in with the first group on offense and defense have not had to play for 4 continuous quarters, which
right,
I guess could be a good thing. Shannon Brooks ain't got that many carries. Maybe
right,
he'll get a bunch Friday. But we told
I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
Well, he should be rested. He hasn't had to carry the ball that much. But it is also a challenge physically when they're not used to that. So we may, unfortunately, see some of those first game problems
right
in the third and fourth quarter if we're not aware of it and trying to mentally prepare ourselves. And physically right now, it's Wednesday now. We got to prepare ourselves Wednesday, Thursday to be physically prepared on Friday. So hopefully players doing what we ask them to do so we don't see those things. But it's a great thing to win games and to be over at halftime. But one of the negatives is it's early in the year we haven't had to challenge our guys for 4 straight quarters. So that'll be interesting to see.
And speaking of the physical toll, you guys, like you said, you run some no huddle. Talk a little bit about having to manage that type of offense, especially it's a smaller school, so the depth isn't there as much. But as you said, having the scrimmage early and then having the big lead, you're able to get some young guys in. How do you manage that with your no huddle attack?
Well, it's a challenge. What we do offensively would probably, in that regard, be better served at 6A school or somewhere where you had 2 or 3 deep at every position. But you got to remember we don't play other 6A schools.
That's true.
So our advantage is that, yes, there's some depth issues, and yes, but we got to do 2 things. We try to maximize every player on our team. Now, that doesn't happen. Every player on the team doesn't get in every single game and all that. But we do probably play as many people as anybody our size. I mean, we don't play a lot of guys both ways. We rep a lot of guys in. I think we played, something like 11 or 12 guys with the first group at 6 positions on offense, not counting the linemen. We may play 6 or 7 offensive linemen, and we may play 6 or 7 receivers, and then we usually play 1 quarterback. But everybody else kind of rotates in and out, including Brooks. He'll come out, and and we try to do that to stay fresh. And so at Pickens High School, we have got to get the most out of every single guy we got. I mean, if there's somebody that can go out there and play 4 plays for us, we got to get them out there playing 4 plays and doing a good job. And our kids have bought into that, and I hope they continue to do that. Defensively, same way. We're going to play 4 or 5 D linemen, for 3 positions, and a couple linebackers for 2 positions, and so on. But the second thing is we got to prepare ourselves physically from January to now, to where we feel like if we go out to the game and we're playing a team our size, another 4A school or AAA school, something like that, if it's hot, it's hot for both teams.
Right.
I mean, if it's early for both teams. I mean, we don't want to hear a lot of excuses. We want our guys to be prepared that, we're probably going to be tired of running this offense. Imagine how tired they're going to be. And now, that doesn't always translate. Gilmer did a great job last year against us. Northwest did a great job last year against us. So it doesn't always work out like that. But the mindset has to be that these guys, when we're going to train from January to November, where we know it's going to be hot and we know we're going to be tired and all that, and we got to push past that and put your body in shape to do it. You can't turn it on that game week and go play Johnny Manziel.
Right.
You got to set that up all year. Put your body in shape.
Games are won in June and July.
Yeah, hopefully the Tide will take it to Johnny Manziel this week.
I think they will. I'm not going to lie to you.
I hope so.
He made me like train of thought with the Johnny Manziel. You got me thinking about it. Now that's a big game, Coach. Now, obviously, you're a Tide fan. Talk a little bit about just being a football coach and being a fan as well. I mean, we can talk about everything. Just talk a little bit about your fanhood and how you root for the Tide.
I don't. I went to Alabama, so and I'm from the state of Alabama. So everybody in the state of Alabama has to either pull for Alabama or Auburn, and since my family most pull for Alabama, so I went to Alabama. But it's different when you're a coach because I hate it. I very rarely go see them. I really never go see them play.
Mm-hmm.
I very rarely get to go see an NFL game. The Falcons, where I'm from, people more Saints people, but I like all those teams. Coach Smith did a good job with the Falcons, but I don't get to see many people play. Everything we watch is, we say, hey, look at that. Wonder if we can do that when you're all.
I was wondering about that. Like, do you guys look at football that way? We
do some. I mean, a lot of the off season, especially what we do offensively, is shared with a lot of coaches. I know a lot of guys at college level that we work with, and we share a lot of things and tweak some things that work for us or work for other coaches. And in the off season, there's a lot of communication between the colleges and us on that stuff. In the season, we're so busy on our game. We're going to play Northwest Friday, and we got to come back and do all our self-scout stuff, and then get ready for the next game against Heritage. So Saturday and Sunday is very very hectic, and I'll find time to sit down and watch Texas A&M and Alabama, but that'll be about it. Most of that stuff you're catching on highlights,
right? Or
sometimes I'll catch games with teams that and A&M runs an offense like ours, so does Oregon and some of those teams. I'll catch them in like February sometime on some ESPN channel, and watch and see. So I mean, in the season's very hectic for us. But it's exciting to watch football. I'm just excited that people are so passionate about football, whether it's at the NFL level, college level, high school. Even our middle school teams have a lot of interest. So I mean, we're excited that people are excited about football. Sometimes their excitement is, a little over the top, but that's okay. At least they're excited, and I don't probably get as excited as some people get, but I definitely went to the University of Alabama, and that's where my loyalties lie. Yeah.
Now it's
good to say that now. It wasn't always in the last 10 years. Wasn't always good to say that.
Yeah, well, it's funny how many Alabama fans you see now. But my wife graduated from Auburn, and her twin brother graduated from Alabama.
Yeah.
So
divided loyalty.
Yeah. I'm glad that you actually talked about people being passionate about football. Obviously, in the Southeast, it's probably the most passionate about football overall. So, some people might argue the state of Texas. But the game of football has come under a lot of scrutiny lately with obviously with the concussions and just the physical nature of the sport. Talk a little bit about what you guys do in particular. I know the GHSA has certain guidelines and whatnot, but talk a little bit about what you guys do for concussions in general, concussions specifically, and injuries, and especially with it being hot now, right. just the overall health of the athletes.
Well, we look at three. You got three things that you got to look at nowadays as a coach. You got concussions, heat, and then general safety as far as like how they tackle and people using proper technique to not injure themselves. Certain kind of injuries are going to occur, shoulders and ankles and knees, and there's going to be some issues that we're going to try to train, and we got a trainer that does a good job. We got a staff of people ready to get guys back from shoulder injuries, ankle injuries, stuff like that. But taking that out and talking to the main stuff, you got to teach proper tackling. We got to do a good job with the middle school, with the youth leagues doing that. We try to work with them. We can do even better. We're going to continue working with them. We got, and then the kids got to make a choice. They got to do the right thing. They got to be trained on how to tackle and how to block and not put themselves where their body's in harm's way where there can be a serious injury there. That used to be all you heard about football, was those kind of things. And
right.
Now the heat and concussions have kind of even overridden that, but we don't want to get away from that either. We got to teach proper technique. Can't have guys, ducking their heads and things like that. Concussions are a major issue now. Probably not any bigger of an issue than they were when I first started coaching. Coaches are a lot more educated on them. I mean, we didn't know about a lot of stuff we know now. So, but every coach I meet, and I know all of them, are very receptive to it. We're all out here to help these kids learn and get better. And we want to win on Friday nights, but we're really excited about working with the kids. We don't want any of them in harm's way. And so, everybody's kind of on board with, the sit them out policy. And, the state passed some rules, but to be honest, every rule the state's passed on concussions we were already doing.
Right.
And most coaches were. So, I know they got to put that in writing, but, we're going to take precautions. If a kid has any issue, we're going to sit them out. We actually set 2 guys out against Sonoraville in second, and after about the second quarter sometime that ended up not even having those symptoms.
Right.
We saw a few symptoms, we set them out, it turned out that wasn't even what it was. But, we're going to err on the side of caution on that. And that's just part of football now. It's just something, you got to make sure it's a culture where the kids understand that, if their finger kind of hurts, they need to suck it up. But if, they got a head injury, they need to tell somebody immediately. We need to get it looked at. And we try to try to work on it. With the heat, there's only an issue in, a few more weeks. By the time you get to October, so it's not an issue at all. But, the heat's another issue that you got to prepare from January to July for. You can't sit around all summer and then just go out there on the first mandatory day and run, and run up the hill 10 or 15 times. Yeah, you're going to have an issue. So that's why the heat's been an issue, is because of people being inside a lot more during the summer. And it's another thing, though, coaches got to be educated. We can't go out there telling kids to suck it up when, it's a heat-related issue. If, it's hot, we get off. But one thing we do, and a lot of people wouldn't, if they don't know about our program, may not know this, but we very rarely practice in full pads. We wear shoulder pads and helmets most days, and we run stuff fast. And, we don't run at the end of practice. We do all of our running during practice. And,
right.
We run for punishment if we have to at the end, but we don't run just to run like a lot of teams do. And but I feel like most games our teams look like they're physical. They like they're in good shape, and so it's something we believe in. But sometimes just taking those leg pads off or not wearing full pads is one of the first steps to letting guys practice full speed in the heat. And then when you put those pads on, it's, a few days you scrimmage here and there, go full pads, and it's kind of a special thing for the kids. So, whereas like 7 or 8 years ago, we would have never done that. But nowadays, football's just changed, and it's one of the reasons we like our offense how it is, because I think for nowadays, football's a little less physical in some cases, and a little more,
a little faster
athlete, a little faster pace, a little smarter game than it was 10 years ago. And so we're trying to evolve with that. I mean, we used to run the ball every play 7 or 8 years ago. So I'm all for running the ball every play. But you got to you got to figure out what's going to work out with these kids and make it work in this season. It's not 2005, it's not 1995. It's 2013. We got to figure out what's going to happen with these guys in this season. And concussions and safety of players and heat and all that is every bit, if not more, of an issue that we deal with as defending the defense of Northwest Whitfield or playing their offense. I mean, it's every bit as much of an issue, and
right.
what we have to deal with in the coaches' meetings and with the players.
Now, speaking of Northwest Whitfield, you guys, that's a region opponent. You guys, you beat Sonoraville pretty handily, and obviously, and I know coaches never want to say it, but they're not very good. But Northwest Whitfield you guys had a close game with them last year, but weren't quite able to pull it out. Talk a little bit about having the familiarity with the opponent that maybe you didn't have last year. Obviously, we talked about it was a new system last year, but this year it's not. And this year, you guys, obviously you have a little extra motivation, but just talk about having that knowledge of having seen them before.
Right. Well, it helps, and I think we're trying to teach our guys how to play and how to get better every day and how to get better every play. And we got to do a good job of playing all season. This is the next game. It's very important, but it's not a region game in terms of standings. We got to play Cass, Gilmer, Cedartown, and River Ridge.
Right.
We got to win probably 2 of those, maybe 3, to have a chance to play in the 10th game. This game Friday is a great opportunity for us to get better, to win those games at the end. Hopefully we can win. They're very talented. They've done a good job. But I think for our players, I think they may are doing a better job of understanding the whole totality of what we're trying to do. We're not, we just have to, we got a great opportunity Friday to play a quality opponent. They are going to be a little bigger and maybe a little physical, and then we play. They're going to be very well coached. Coach Robinson does a great job, especially defensively, did a great job offensively, spread it out. You know, and like I said, we haven't had to play all 4 quarters. We don't have to play all 4 quarters.
Right.
Preferably ahead, but maybe behind. I mean,
Right.
either one. We got to play all 4 quarters, and we got to learn how to finish at the end. I was very disappointed last year in our ability to finish the game against Northwest. I thought we had a similar season last year to this year so far, where we did pretty well in the scrimmage, and we won the first game by a decent amount of points. And so when that didn't happen, when we didn't score every time we had the ball, I felt like the players, you know, kind of got a little antsy or something. I don't know. We didn't have the proper attitude to just finish drives.
Right.
And even if we played a little behind all game, make a play in the 4th quarter, give yourself a chance to win. You know, I want to tell you it's going to be better. We'll have to see on Friday. But I mean, because we're in the same exact
Right.
scenario. But I do hope, you know, I think we got our skill players particularly are all a year older. Most of them played last year, so the linemen are younger. But I think in those skill positions, we've got guys who have been in these games now. They're not. The game is not going to overcome them as much as maybe it did last year, and hopefully that's an advantage. But like I said, they, you know, Northwest, they working too, you know, and that's
right. Yeah, they want to win too as well. I'm glad you touched on the offensive line, because that was one of my questions here. Is how has the offensive line looked? A lot of people, you know, we talked about the interest in, you know, in your program. A lot of people had some questions about the offensive line because, you know, you guys lost some talent. You guys, you know, you said yourself you have a young line. How and I know it's difficult to really evaluate when, you know, when you win 47-0,
right.
You know. So, but just talk a little bit about what you've seen and what you expect in this upcoming game versus North.
Well, it'll be a great
Whitfield.
test for them. I mean, we've got some good film on those guys, and you know, our situation on offensive line is this: they none of them are seniors either. So on top of the fact that they're all
Right.
new starters, none of them are seniors. So you know, it's just how it shook out. The guys that we rep in and the guys that start are all juniors and sophomores, and very talented juniors and sophomores. But you know, seniors a lot of times win games in high school football, and so you know, those guys have, you know, they've got a challenge. You know, now there's 7 or 8 of them that rep in, and there's 7 or 8 of the best kids on the team. Great guys. They try hard. Their coach has done a good job. And Coach Culver, Coach Wigington, done a great job with them. You know, I wouldn't trade them for anybody. You know, we love them. But they do have to, you know, they're a little undersized here and there, and they're a little younger, and so, you know, they've got to make sure that they do things exactly right. You know, maybe Brumby gets away with one bad step here or there. They don't. You know, they've got to do it exactly right. So, you know, so far they have really embraced that, and we've got plays where they've really performed great, and we've got plays where they really performed poorly. So I'm sure it'll be more of both on Friday night. The key is they got to do their job and, you know, execute and be as physical as they can be, you know, until the whistle. And if they do that, it gives us a chance for the guys behind them who are pretty talented, you know, to make some plays. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to watching those guys play. Some great guys. We've got some great guys on this team across the board, but that offensive line group's a good group of guys. They're trying hard, and, you know, you don't get points for trying,
Right.
but it does get you there closer, you know.
Right. Now, Coach, you touched on this a little bit earlier with your first quote-unquote region games aren't, obviously you want to win every game, aren't quite as important as, to say, the sub-region games. Talk a little bit about how, as your mentality as the team and as your coaching staff, when you approach those games, when, you know, in the back of your mind, you know, they're for seeding, but the games that really matter are the sub-region games.
Well, it's just, you know, the players have to see it as a great opportunity to get better. You know, we're like anybody else. We're not going to put a scout team out there that simulates Northwest Whitfield.
Right.
We just can't do that. So the best practice we could get for Cass and Cedartown and Gilmer and River Ridge is this Friday night. The best practice we could get. Now, look, I've never seen anybody go out there and not try to win.
Right.
So we're going to go out and try to win on Friday. We want to win more than anything. But it is just a part of a process that, you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We talk to guys about, you know, you watch those guys run these mile races in track, and somebody's always out in front and feeling good about themselves, and then that guy usually doesn't win.
Right.
It's the guy that runs all 4 laps at the same speed that wins, and that's where we want to be. You know, it's great to be 1-0, but it really wouldn't matter if we were 0-1. We want to get in that game. You know, we've got to perform well against Cass, Cedartown, Gilmer, and River Ridge to give ourselves a chance to get in the 10th game, and in that 10th game, we got to win that game to get in the playoffs. And until we do that, you can measure this team versus the last team or any other team because, we've accomplished the same thing. Even beating Northwest Friday would be great for our program, but it would not necessarily get us in the playoffs.
Right.
So it's just going to make us 2-0 instead of 1-1.
Right.
But either way, I'm really excited about the valuable experience that will come to if the kids have the right attitude. Anything that happens on Friday will give us an opportunity to learn, to get some video, to get back to work, and get better for the next week. And as long as we approach it that way, the result is kind of, we don't control that. Like I said, we're going to try hard. Everybody's going to play hard. We're going to try hard, and but we don't control where the ball bounces. We don't control turnovers and penalties to some degree. And we want to see the guys play hard and execute it. And I've been very fortunate that the whole time I've coached, assistant coach or head coach, we've had good kids. They played hard. And I'm sure these guys will play hard Friday too.
All right, and I really just want to ask just two more questions about, and specifically, your guys' no-huddle attack. We talked about the depth of your team, and obviously they don't, you're playing teams that have the same type depth as you guys. When is it that, is there something that you maybe notice when you've got them, and also is there a like when you're up 47-0, or like when do you know to keep your foot on their throat and to take it off? Like, and I asked that because, and I know you said in the season you guys don't really see a lot of football, but I watched the Eagles Washington game, and Chip Kelly had his foot on the throat early in the game in the first half. It looked like it was going to be a blowout, and they kind of struggled with trying to run the clock out. Like,
yeah, I did actually watch some of that.
Yeah, like and when I saw that, I thought specifically of you guys.
I think the best thing you can do in our offense, and I think pretty much in any offense nowadays, but the best thing you can do is don't worry about what the score is. We determined when we got up by a certain amount last Friday, we took our guys out. Until we took them out, it was 0-0. They didn't worry about what the score was. We need to play fast. In the NFL, they're not taking guys out because, the other team can come back.
Right.
If I was an NFL coach, we'd be playing that way the whole game. Whether it was 50-0 or 7-0, those guys get paid.
Yeah.
But I think for us, the key is, we have several tempos we play at. It's, it's not really worth debating right now or going into detail of. But we have a slow tempo and a fast tempo.
Okay.
And I can dictate that, based on if we want to hold on to the lead or something like that. But I have seen so many games where when you get away from what you do, sometimes it actually hurts you. You're better off just to play. Just play. And when we do try to play fast, and we are going to, try to line up as fast as we can and play the next play, which is very similar to how the Eagles play. We don't have some of the Eagles players. we try to run the same stuff. But, if that's what you are, then that's what you are. You shouldn't change it because you're losing, and you shouldn't change it because you're winning, really. Now we'll go a little slower or do our tempo where, everybody, we kind of hard count. Everybody looks over the sideline. You can do some stuff like that to make it go slower.
Right.
You're running the clock, but the players are still playing with the same pace they normally play with. I think we've had to adapt that. There's that, and then scoring in the red zone, scoring in short yardage. That always are a little bit of an issue for the teams that play fast and run and spread people out. And Gilmer doesn't have a problem with short yardage.
They're going to have.
So
right.
So everybody's got different problems. Whereas we're great at 2-minute drill.
Point, right.
So you have to work on the stuff you're not good at. And for us, we got we've identified 7 or 8 things we wanted to work on. But I think one of them really is pace of play when you're ahead or behind, because you don't want to be behind and playing too fast where people aren't doing the right things, getting lined up, getting set. We need to play as if the scoreboard's non-existent. It's my job to watch the scoreboard, know the time, know the down distance, know the situation, know the score. It's no player's job. Their job is just run the next play, like it's just a play in practice that we're running. And we've had to preach that, but that is something that we're trying to get through to our guys.
Well, I appreciate it, Coach.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.